Let's start with the word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time we can continue our preview for this quarter of the lessons of beginnings and creation, recreation, and restoration in Jesus Christ. As we look at the image and the picture analogy of marriage this afternoon, may we glean some of the principles you want us to understand, that we might be better disciples of yours, better stewards, and believers that will be more passionate for you and your glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, I told you about that one philosopher who was incarcerated in 1954 here in the United States because he engaged in homosexual activity. In 1954, homosexual activity was criminal. It was considered a federal crime. Today, it's not only tolerated, it's not even legalized, it's whatchamacallit, it's protected with hostility. When I say protected with hostility, if you say anything against gays today, you're a homophobic, and people will brand you as a hate monger. How far have we gone? That's like a little over half a century. Why? The reason why that happened is we left the biblical principles that our founding fathers followed in the establishment of this nation. It's even very offensive to atheists to see the figure of the Ten Commandments on the cross. You know, how far have we got? And in fact, you go to the Supreme Court, every door and every gate that you see in the Supreme Court of the United States has the Ten Commandments right there. You know, and they're even going to the point like, you got to take away God from the dollar. In God we trust, you know. And you know, where are we headed? It's like the kid who hates his dad and his mom because his mom and his dad wouldn't let him go out in the streets to play. And the mom and the dad trying to tell the kid, you don't understand, honey, you will be hurt. You might even get killed. That's why I want you to stay within the yard or within the house because I want to protect you. What's going to happen? Okay, fine, do it your way, do your thing. You know what happened? What's going to happen to the kid? And I hate, you know, I hope that never happens when God tells America, go ahead, do your thing. Because we don't need the devil to destroy us. We will destroy ourselves if we leave God. And I'm only so glad there's a ray of hope. You know, they're trying to pass the gay rights bill in Illinois. And it's being blocked by a host of evangelical pastors in Chicago. In California, they want to repeal Proposition 8. You have heard of DOMA, right? DOMA is the Defense of Marriage Act. What is the Defense of Marriage Act? They said, we don't want to change the definition of marriage. The marriage is a union between a man and a woman. I mean, regardless of culture, regardless of religion, across the board, marriage is the union between a man and a woman. Who gave us the license to change this definition? And then to add to insult to injury, who gave us the license to legalize this and penalize anybody who deals with... Because if you start standing for that definition, you'll be intolerant, right? Somebody can sue you. But there's where we're going right now. I think that's why the lesson this coming Sabbath is very relevant. Part of creation and the study of this doctrine involves the marriage institution. And marriage institution, the way God introduced it to us. Okay? So our key text is Ephesians 5, 22, no, that's not 23, I'm sorry. That's not, Ephesians 5, hold on. I had all my notes laid out here for me. To 33. So, my bad. One of the fun parts of what I do is to be part of a wedding. and develop a wedding sermon. I get to do this again this year. Yeah, don't worry. I will not sign legal papers. I'll just preach the homily. Somebody else will handle the legal papers for me. But always when I preach a marriage sermon, there's three. There are three rhymes that goes, what? Leave, cleave, conceive. Leave, cleave, and conceive. Leave your parents, leave your father and mother, cleave together, and then conceive and reproduce. Replenish there. Leave, cleave, and conceive. That's if you take it from Genesis. Now, I like to carry over Genesis to the New Testament because we see a lot more light in what Jesus has done in the New Testament that sheds light on in the Old Testament passages. That's why when you study Genesis 1, I don't fail to study Genesis 1 without pointing to John 1, right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, because both passages starts within the beginning. Except for when you go to John 1, it is intentionally centered on Jesus Christ, rather than just sheer creation. There's nothing wrong in studying creation, but I think the Bible intends for us to study creation in the light of the creative work of Jesus Christ. Now, along those lines, I think the intention of the Bible is for us to understand marriage from the context of the work of Christ. Okay? One thing is sure. When you look at the history of the Old Testament, what is the most common analogy between Christ and Israel? The most common analogy is that Christ is the bridegroom, Israel is the bride. That's why when Israel falls into idolatry and worship other gods, how is it described in the Old Testament? It is adultery. It is spiritual adultery. That's why you cannot separate worship, the concept of worship, and the concept of marriage. When you go to the New Testament, it's the same thing, particularly in Revelation. When you look at Revelation and Christ being the groom and the church being the bridegroom, it talks about worship and false worship. What symbolizes true worship? It is the true church. It's in purity, dressed in white, getting ready for Jesus to marry her in the last days. That will be the next sermon in Revelation. How do you symbolize the apostate church and false worship? The mother of prostitutes, the harlots. It's adultery. It's immorality. So, see this contrast, and the whole reason why you have this contrast is because of the great controversy between Jesus and Satan, which started in Genesis 3:15. So you got to understand the definition of marriage in Genesis started when men did not fall yet. You follow? It was before the fall. The definition of marriage was before the fall. Now we live on the other side of the fall. We got to understand God's plan in Jesus Christ as to what marriage should be on the other side of the fall. That's what we're trying to do. And I think Paul did an excellent job. One of the best passages of marriage is in Ephesians 5:22 to 23. Okay, let's read that. If somebody would be kind enough, let's read it through. Ephesians 5:22 to 33.
Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is head of the wife, as also Christ is head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church, and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having a spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. For we are members of his own body, of his flesh and of his bones. For this reason, a man shall not leave his father and
Shall
mother,
leave.
and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular to love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband.
Okay. We will go to the climax at the back end. I'll give you a diagram, but we will go through this first. Let's look at the passage that Susan just read. In verse 31, it is a direct quote from Genesis, right? See that? Verse 31. Do you see that?
Genesis 2:24.
Yeah, Genesis. It's quoted from Genesis 2:24. So you're talking, the New Testament is quoting the Old Testament. The fact that it's quoting the Old Testament means Paul is trying to explain what that means. And then there's a qualifier in verse 32, because this is where we should start our study. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. So whereas in Genesis 2:24, marriage is defined in terms of the union between a man and a woman prior to the fall, marriage is taught by Paul in Ephesians 5 as an analogy of Christ's relationship with the church. Okay, now you got to understand, what is the church? We studied that this morning. What is the church? The church is the group of believers. Why do we call them believers? Because they have been redeemed by faith. Therefore, when you say church and Christ, or Christ and the church, we're talking about Christ and a group of redeemed people. Therefore, they're saying, on the other side of the fall, there was salvation after we fell from grace. And because we fell in sin, Christ saved us. And those who accept Jesus Christ becomes the church. And Paul is saying between Christ and the church is an analogy of marriage. And through the church and Christ, we will understand the true meaning of marriage today. Everybody get that? Paul is basically saying, you understand the relationship of the church with Jesus Christ, you will understand what it means to have a good marriage, the ideal marriage that is designed for those who'd like to join together in holy matrimony. Okay? So in a marriage, and I'm not talking about Doma, okay? Well, Doma is taken from the scriptures, but in a marriage, there's a union of two people. If you notice in Genesis 1, male and female created he them. Okay? Why is it male and female? It's not Adam and Steve, okay? It's Adam and Eve, okay? That's what they say. Because God designed variety even in the sexes of His creatures. Male and female is not only true for human beings, male and female is even true for animals. Again, that's why, and male and female sex is the mechanism whereby procreation is possible. Okay, in evolution, how do people multiply? The way you multiply in evolution is through the survival of the fittest. Okay? Natural selection. In the context of creation, how do you procreate? How do you replenish the earth? You replenish it by procreation. Through male and female, through the God-given gift of sex, we are able to have offsprings, and when we can replenish the earth. And the nice thing about that design of God, that is one of the holiest gifts that God has given, and it has been perverted. I've always said this, the way we've perverted Genesis 1, what did Adam and Eve do as soon as they found out that they were naked? They started clothing themselves. Okay? Why did they clothe themselves? Because they realized they were naked. Why did they find it necessary to clothe their nakedness? Because they want to hide their shame. Right? In other words, if you clothe your nakedness, you're actually protecting what is shameful. You know how the world has turned it around? You go to the publishing zone in Hollywood. Do Hollywood movie stars cover themselves? No, they expose as much as they can. All right? So, that's why it's amazing. If you understand the Bible, you look at the cultural trajectory of our world today. We're going the opposite direction. Okay? So the first thing is, instead of finding shame in going into what we call modesty, we're shying away from modesty. Second question is, what have we done with marriage in our society? I already asked that. We've redefined marriage. I'll repeat this. This is the third Sabbath I repeated this. The Florida court has already ruled on the legitimacy of a 3-parent family, right? 2 lesbians and 1 homosexual. The lesbian said, "We paid you." he told the gay guy, "We paid you. Thank you. We will not take care of the kid." And the homosexual said, "No, I want visiting rights." So the kid grows up in a family with 2 lesbians as mother and father, and another parent who happens to be gay. You tell me if that kid will have a normal life. Supposedly he will. Okay, so, but that's exactly what has transpired. You cannot think of such aberrations if you think of marriage in terms of the analogy of Christ in the church. Did you follow that? That's very important. Paul says, if you look at marriage as a picture of Christ and the church, it will be reprehensible to think of such aberrations, of 3-parent family, of gays and homophobia and what have you. There will be a sanctity and a purity in the marriage institution. Okay, so let's break it down. There's a purpose to marriage, and there are 2 parties in the marriage. We have a husband, and we have a... Okay, fine, I know you call it wife, but remember, we have alliteration. The wife is a helpmeet. That's why 2 H's, okay? Husband and helpmeet. Okay? Now, in terms of husbands, there are 3 things that the husband should fulfill. Okay? He must be a leader, he must be a lover, and he must be a laborer. 3 L's. Okay? Why do we have a lot of weak churches? I know we could still emphasize discipleship and all sorts of stuff in the church. But there's one basic reason a lot of church analysts say why church become weak, particularly in the United States. You know when that happens? When the males in the church relinquish spiritual leadership. You follow me? When the fathers and the men in the church relinquish spiritual leadership, the church goes down the drain. Why? Because the purpose of Christ is to have male leadership in the church. Follow me carefully. What did Paul say? This is a great mystery. This is not just about marriage. This is about the church and Christ. Therefore, it's about the church and Christ. Jesus is saying, within the church, there must be leadership. What kind of leadership should there be? There should be male leadership. Okay, that's why it becomes very sensitive, especially for feminists. The whole issue of women elders, the whole issue of ordination of women, and jockeying for position and power within the church. Okay, what does Paul have to say about that? In terms of what Ephesians 5 is saying, who should take the leadership role in the church and in the family? Who? The woman or the man? Okay. Does that mean men and women are not equal? Okay. This is very important. In essence, in identity, in value, male and female are equal. But their roles are different. Right? And I'm telling you, is that just happenstance? Or is it God designed it that way? Every 30 days, women go to a certain cycle that men do not go to. They don't go through that cycle. And every 30 days, whenever women goes through that cycle, it affects their whole body. Affects their moods and all sorts of stuff. And I don't even want to go into this very controversial law that they're now accepting females in the military. You've heard about this. Yeah. And a lot of the commanders say, you will actually lower the standards of our defenses when you do that, because there are just things women cannot do in the battlefield and men. But you know why? We want to be equal. The problem here, our sense of equality, is having the same role and the same position. That's the biggest problem. I hope you clarify that in your classes. Equality is not in terms of roles, it is equality in terms of essence and in terms of value. You're the same. Let me give you an analysis again. Being a CEO of a Fortune 500 corporation or being a manager of a supervisor is no less respectable than being a homemaker or a housewife. Are you following me? Changing the diaper of the kid is as valuable as the one making a strategic decision for a big corporation in the whole United States. You follow me? There is equality, but the roles are different. And you've seen this. There's a lot. There's been a survey. They tried to put a dollar figure into how much the mother does at home, who's a full-time mom. You know, turns out after they calculate all the value that you need to pay a mother, a homemaker, you won't be able to pay her enough compared to what the husband is making. Okay? In other words, what the Bible is saying is rearing kids and being a homemaker is as noble and as dignified as being in the workplace as a male. Don't forget that. The problem is when you start saying, no, the woman should also be CEO, the woman should also be manager, and unless the woman is manager, there is no equality. Okay, and then don't jump on me, because the culture dictates that today. For us, equality is equal opportunity and equal positions. And you can contest what I'm trying to say. I'm just reflecting what Paul is trying to say in Ephesians 5. It is not the female that's designed to assume spiritual leadership. It is the male that's designed to assume spiritual leadership. And I've said this several times in the church. You know, I was talking to Susan, a week ago or two ago, if the male leadership in our church start conducting regular family worship at home, take the spiritual leadership, they don't have to do the dishes and do all sorts of stuff. You know, you got division of labor. But if the fathers of the family make sure that he can take his family to bend their knees and pray to God, tell you what's going to happen in our church. We talk about revival. That's where the revival comes in. It's not how much we can accomplish as a church, but how much we can lead the church to bend their knees to God. And that's what Paul is trying to say here. Okay, let me just summarize it here, and we will come back to this. There is an identity and equality in terms of nature, okay, in terms of essence. But there is cooperation in terms of work, in terms of honor. I honor you as a person. Both of you should honor each other. But there must be submission. And we'll go back to that when you go to the submission in terms of final decisions. That's very hard to take. And I'm pretty sure this will be controversial in your Sabbath school classes. When push comes to shove and a final decision has got to be made in the home and in the church, who is supposed to make the final decision, the male or the female? Okay, Ephesians 5 says it's the male. And what is the duty? How should the female behave in that situation? Subject and submit to the final. That doesn't mean she wasn't part of the decision-making process. She's part of it, she will have her input, but the last ultimate responsibility will be on the man. In fact, I always said this, who first ate of the fruit? A woman, female. Who did God put the blame on? Okay.
Because he didn't say anything.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, I know. Well, there's other ways to look at it. But all I'm trying to say is, the reason that's why it's called first and second Adam, is God designed the male to take the leadership. In other words, the buck stops here. If the family falls apart, it is not the responsibility of the mother. It's the responsibility primarily of the father, the male. Okay? I know there is extenuating circumstances. There can be single-family homes. But we're talking about the normal definition of marriage here. The ideal definition of a marriage is the husband should take the spiritual role and responsibility to make decisions, strategic decisions in the family. Oh, this will fly really well in your classes, especially for those people who are very dominant as women. And we'll talk about that in a little while. I'll just give you a foretaste. The moment women in the church and women in the family crushes the ego of the male, you destroy the home and you destroy the church. I don't want to tell you, if you don't believe me, try it. Please don't try it. It will wreak havoc in the home and it will wreak havoc in the church. And you know how you destroy the ego of the male? If the female does not respect the ego of the male. And we'll go to that in a little while, which is very important. The bottom line is, the male, the husband, must be the leader. How does the Bible say it? Susan read it. What's Ephesians 5:23? What does it say? For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ. What is the analogy here? How is Christ related to the church? Will the church have any audacity to say that I will not listen to Christ? Okay. Yeah, that's a very powerful analogy. Okay. And who's supposed to assume that leadership? Husbands. Okay. Don't rationalize and argue with me and then, this is the normal setting. There will be some exceptions here. Okay. But the ideal setting is a husband. Okay. 25. Verse 25. What does it say in verse 25? Love your wife just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself. See, even if Christ is head of the church, okay, he calls the shots. It is not a domineering leadership. It is a loving leadership. In the leadership world, at least in our church, we call it servant leadership. Have you heard of the term? I'm a servant leader. You do not engage your position that you're elected into within the church body the way the secular world engages their position. As soon as I'm manager, as soon as I'm director, you follow me because I am your boss, right? That's the way you do it in the secular world. You don't do that in the context of the church. Now that I am your leader, I can have more opportunities to serve you. That's what it's saying. Okay, I may be calling the shots, but I call the shots within the purview, within the context of serving you. That's what he's trying to say. How do you do that? By loving a church and loving the wife. This is a very potent combination. If you assume assertive leadership and express love to your mate, that will be a very, very powerful marriage. That's what it's trying to say. And then letter C, he must be a laborer. It's interesting that why it's called laborer. Remember the curses? Remember, we're on the other side of the fall, right? After the fall, there were like consequences to the fall. What was the curse given to man? Out of the sweat of your brow. In other words, one of your main responsibilities in the home now is to till the soil or to work. You must provide for the family. You must be the sole provider, okay? Now, this is another issue. America has changed a lot of the Bible setting. It is very, very common right now in the United States for a husband and wife to be working just because of the demands of our very economic and capitalistic society. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But who should be the primary provider? It should be the man. Ideally, what the Bible is saying, if the man can concentrate on providing for the house and the woman can concentrate in building the home or making the home, being a homemaker, that's the ideal situation in the Bible. But the primary responsibility providing is the man. How does he do it? By being a protector, by being proactive, okay, being a planner, by being precise, and being I've already mentioned, provider. How do you provide? Two things. Again, rhyme. You nourish and you cherish. What does verse 29 say? For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes the church and cherishes the church. It's amazing. It's a nice analogy here. You love your wife the way you love your own body, right? It's saying, and a lot of people read this. So you see, you should love yourself. That is a doctrine of the Bible. Wow, what a stretch. That's not what it's trying to say. All that Paul is trying to say here is, do you let yourself go hungry? No, what do you do when you're hungry? You feed yourself. Why do you feed yourself? Because you want to take care of your body, right? And then my illustration, my illustration is, remember before you take off in a flight, now everything is automated in video. Before, I like it, when you ride local planes in national flights within the Philippines, they still do this. Some of the flight attendants, and there's one part of the emergency procedures. In case of problems with cabin pressure, all the oxygen mask will fall. What are the first thing you need to do? You gotta get that, smack it in your nose, and then help others. Why do you do that? Because if you don't put that here, you won't be able to, you'll be dead, and both of you will be dead. You gotta first concern yourself in being stable so you can help other people. The same holds true here. He's saying, before you even nourish and cherish, Paul is saying, you take care of your body. If you take care of your body, you should take care of your wife the same way you take care of your body. And how much do you? It's funny. Micha is giving me a tough time. She's my cardiologist now. And we watch my blood pressure. I'm hoping I get less and less responsibility. I can keep it in check. It always goes up. And then, of course, I know Michai, the solution is for me to lose weight. The solution is for me to eat less. And then Michai tells me, I know, Michai is so nice. Because it's tough, because eating is addictive. Isn't that true? We eat a lot, and the point is, we even indulge our bodies because we care to feed our bodies. And Paul is saying, do not abuse the body of your wife at the same token. All that Paul is trying to say is, if you care for that body this much, you should be able to take care of your wife in terms of nourishing and cherishing her. Two things. What does it mean, nourish? You must be able to feed your wife, and she must feel that she's cherished. Okay? Now let's go to the helpmeet. What's the role of the wife? Aha. Yes. Okay.
Here is the acts of the husband.
Uh-huh.
She's there as the protector and the deliverer.
Uh-huh.
How about the situation now is the woman is
Working.
who is the one who work more salary, more salary than you, and you cannot decide because you earn the money.
Yeah.
It is there.
Yeah.
You are the.
Yeah.
You
You know what?
I will be the one to decide where the money go.
Yeah. I'll speak in the vernacular now. Nakita akong Pinoy, nag-uusap dun sa Unimart. Unimart ba? Dun sa ano ba yun? Jofen ba yun sa Bolingbrook? Sabi niya, pare, okay lang ang buhay kung ang asawa mo nurse. Sabi niya, marami mapupulsa. Pero kung ang asawa mo hindi nurse, ay gutom. Pero kung hindi man doktor, nurse ang asawa mo, okay ka na. Alam mo naman, tatambay na lang yun. This is just an insider joke among Pinoy. Those are the realities of economy. And things have been reshaped by our culture. Okay? You got to make do with what you have. God is saying not to alter. Stop being a nurse. You don't say that. Okay? You just want to make do. And the closest answer that I can give to you is, I was about to reserve this in the last one. I'll give it to you now. We have a friend in California. She was actually responsible for saving my brother's life, and he had the brain surgery. Remember that story? The first time I came here, I was asked to conduct a week of prayer in Madera. That was my first year in America, and I was invited by a friend to conduct a week of prayer in Madera. And she was our host, and she drove us all over California. And when we went to San Francisco, we stayed in a home of her acquaintance. You know what? The lady is a doctor. She's a surgeon. In the Philippines, she was a medical director of a hospital. The husband is an accountant. He's not even a CPA, just an accountant, doing some business work. It came to a point where he said, I can't do this. I can't. I mean, I go to functions, you're there, you're talking, you're all visible, to put it bluntly, you're diminishing my manhood with what's going on. So the guy took off and went here from the Philippines. there came a deciding point in their family. He said, would you care to join me? Asked the kids in the family, would you care to join me here? Wife says, well, if we join you, each kid has a car, you know. We have a very big house, you know. I'm a director, I'm a surgeon. They're very rich when they come. When we join you, all of those will be gone. And the husband, yes, because we will be staying in an apartment. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. We will be in 1 bedroom. All the other kids will be in another bedroom. We will share a very, very small living room, a very small kitchen. But if you really want to be a family, I'm not going back there. You can join me here. We got there, the whole family was there. And the wife gave up her career to be with the husband. And then she jokingly said, oh, I'm too old to take the boards here. So she's a surgical assistant now, you know, similar to, but they're happy. They don't have all the cars, they probably most of them take public transport, but they were happy. I'm not saying this should happen in most cases, but if you follow the basic principle where the wife respects the husband, things change. It is something that will make a difference in the family. This is similar to the tithe question that you have, brother. You trust God in there's a principle of tithing. We've talked about this. Why do people not give tithe on the gross and they give tithe on the net? Because they don't trust God enough. They'd much rather have the government trust God, give them the tax for the gross, and they don't give the tithe for the gross. And then I've always said, ever since I gave tithe when I was 12 years old, the Lord never failed me. And there was not even a question when somebody, do you tithe on the gross or the net? Why will you even ask me that? If I give the government gross, the Lord's going to take the gross. I don't care if we survive on like potatoes every day, you know. I'll do that. I'm going to give it to the... Never once the Lord has failed me. Because I did. In the same principle here. If in the family we trust the principle that the wife should respect the husband and the husband should love the wife, you know amazing things will happen in the family. You know, you listen to pastoral prayers during our church service, the one praying in the elders or the pastor, we pray for family members who are having problems in their relationships. You know why they're having problems? They're straying away from this model. And they're saying, if you only follow this model, miracles can happen within the families and the homes in the church. And that's one thing I like with the Bible. You don't have to read 5, 10 psychology books to understand the solution to your problem. All you need to do is part of a chapter in Ephesians 5 and follow the principles there. And the Lord will guide you if you trust Him. And this is true. Our Bible study will not be meaningful unless you apply what you read here. And if you get to apply this, it's so practical, it will revolutionize. Even if the wife is a nurse or even a doctor, things can happen. Why did I give the example of this family? The wife was willing to give up on her visibility and all of her career. That doesn't mean she doesn't practice as a physician anymore. She still practices, but she will do it without demeaning her husband. It's not easy because of the very prideful heart of man. But the Lord says, if you are willing to follow my model, and however high achiever you are as a woman, and you still respect your husband, I promise you I will bless your relationship. That's what God is trying to say. Man, this is really very touchy. You go to your classes. But hey, offer this. And that's the offer of the Lord. The Lord's going to bless homes if they will follow obediently what the Lord has given here. Okay? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know some woman would ask this. What if the man is not willing to take that position? So there's like man that's kind of, so what do you do?
Sure. Well, that's why everything is predicated in, I think, in verse 22. If you look at verse 22. What's the last phrase in verse 22? As to the Lord. Whereas the wife submits to the husband, both husband and wife must submit to the Lord. Ultimate accountability is not to the husband. Ultimate accountability is both husband and wife to the Lord. If the husband is indolent and lazy, he is not faithful to the Lord. That's why submission of the wife to the husband is subject to submission to the Lord. Submission doesn't mean you tolerate or, ano ba consent sa English? Condone any shortcomings. You know? But you can still respect your husband without condoning a wrongdoing that he does. Okay? Remember, submission is always within the context of being subject to Jesus Christ. Both husband. In fact, Christ is the center of his home. Mother, father, kids, all of them must be accountable to Jesus Christ first before they're accountable to each other. Okay? Yes, and that's a big problem. And the problem is there gotta be a subject of prayer. And in fact, if I were to submit it to you before we go to Bonnie, you know the big challenge of our lesson this coming Sabbath is for God to help us approximate and come close to this model. All the problems we have in the church today, in the homes, is because we are so far from this model. I'm telling you, if we follow this model, we'll have ideal homes in the church and we will have no problem with families. Yes.
So there will be no chance for an unbeliever and a believer in this case.
Okay, well I was planning to address that towards the end, but and Paul is saying, what is so happens? There's several scenarios. What if somebody got converted, and both of them are unbelievers, so only one will become a believer? And Paul is saying, well, you stay with your husband, don't leave your husband. Maybe because of what you do, you can lead him to Christ. But you're right, Bonnie. It's very difficult to impose a biblical principle to a husband who doesn't believe. Because it's impossible. That's why I do not believe in having people pay tithe if they do not believe in Jesus Christ. Because they will make it a business proposition. It's a good investment. God will bless me. If I give God 10, He's going to give me 100. Okay? So they're treating the Bible as a business deal. That's not the purpose of the Bible. But only those people who believes in Jesus learn to give back to Him. So it's not fair for us to demand on the husband. It's not fair for us to demand on the husband who doesn't believe God to conform to this model. That's why Inay, when she was still alive, was very, very strict. He said, he cries when somebody in the family attempts to marry an unbeliever. Because the amount of heartache and pain that will happen in your house. Before you even started, you already messed up the model. And worse, you cannot resolve the model because one is not within the purview of the model. And what is the basic proposition? The farther away you are from this model, the more problems you have. The closer you are, the more closely knit the family would be. Yeah. Oh yes, well, in fact, that's the only, in that particular scenario, the only resort. Well, I don't have to go far. You know how many years I had to pray for Tatay? It was not until several years, I've been here for a long time, when Tatay and Kuya Henry finally decided to be baptized. But without fail, every day Inay prayed for Tatay. But Inay will be the first one to tell you, life wasn't that easy. It was very difficult. Yeah.
How many years?
Yeah.
Before he came here.
Mm-hmm.
And he came here just when Phil-Am praised the Lord.
Yeah.
Because he was able to get him.
Sure. See, and I think not only in this scenario, every known problem we have and challenges as a Christian, prayer is the key, right? Remember the text, the quote I told you? What a man is. I showed it in the slide in one of the last Revelation sermon. What a man is before God on his knees, that he is and no more. Did you get that? You are no better than what you are when your knees are bent to God. I don't care how good you are. And people who refuse to bend their knees to God and do not value prayer, I doubt if they will even come close to the model that we have. But yes, you can never underestimate the power of prayer because it's what you need, especially with exceptions to the case.
I've been through these things, the same thing. The perception is people change, so you hope that they will change.
Sure. Well, that's why a lot of Christian counselors will tell, especially the young kids, oh, you're going out with a guy? The guy's not a Christian. Oh, come on, Mom. It's my witnessing opportunity. You can't accept Christ. I want to mention, I saw that. I've been with the kids in this church for over 15 years. And I've seen this happen, and the girl is so interested in the faith, studying the Bible, until they get married. And the thing is, before they got married, the girl never decided to be baptized. You think the girl is baptized right now? No. You know what the girl did? She pulled the guy with her. No, please. It's a cop-out. If it's a cop-out because of our lust of the flesh and lust of the eyes, oh no, this will be, it's almost like saying, oh, I'll go to a disco and go to the bar and have a fun time Friday night, happy hour, because I will bring me some tracts and give them the gospel.
The wrong place.
Yeah, not that Jesus will not go there. All I'm trying to say is we can go into all sorts of rationalization. The bottom line is there's a model to follow, and the closer you are to the model, the better it would be. And one of the worst scenarios where you can apply this is particularly marriage. In fact, it's a very critical scenario. If you try to rationalize, it will be better. She or he might not be a believer right now. She will come around and she'll be okay. I got news for you. She will not be okay. Yeah. So anyway, don't be driving by the edge of the precipice. Drive as far away as you can from the stuff. Okay. So, in terms of role, I told you there's equality in value as a person, but the role is different. What is the role of the women? The role of the women is in the home, as much as possible. The role of the woman is to be submissive. Respect is very important. Before we go to respect, we'll go to the last part. See a resource. It's so nice. Who's in charge of fixing dinner and getting everybody to the dinner table? Is it the responsibility of the man or the woman? Okay, you expect the woman to train all those, those common courtesies of gathering around the table, arranging for dinner, so that, and then what's the work of the husband? To make sure there's something on the table, right? You work so that something on the table. And the homemaker, the woman, should make sure that something on the table is served properly so that everybody will learn within that stuff. Those are the parameters of the relationship. And sometimes it's very difficult. The brother has this. When the husband already works all day and he still does the dishes, and sometimes he'll do the cooking, there's something wrong. I'm not saying that the husband should not be doing dishes, but that's not the normal thing. The calling of God within this purview is there's a particular resource you must supply within the family, okay, as opposed to the man, okay? So we'll go to, I should have printed this. You should have a copy of this. This is a, can you make copies? All right.
Or they just
He forwarded it.
All right. Okay, I told you about this one pastor. You know what's the divorce rate among Christians today? I'm not just talking about Adventists. Even Adventists is bad. Oh, they say the same as non-Christians. No. According to George Barna, Christian statistics is worse than the world. Well, and there's some explanation to that because I guess a lot of the world, they do not get married, they just live in. So that kind of offsets the figures. Anyways, so this one pastor was saying, just in my congregation alone, so many couples divorce in a year. And then he prayed to God and said, if I can save at least 1 or 2 marriages in a year, that would be good ministry before I die, From now on, he said, if I find a way, if the Lord, if you lead me, and I can save marriages, at least 1 marriage a year from divorce, that will be good ministry. I can leave the world and I had the mission for you. So he left his church and introduced this. This is not new for most of you who attended our studies before, but this is what they call the Love and Respect Seminar, which is run by Pastor Emerson Eggerichs. Okay? You can go Google this thing. There's a lot of stuff there. Okay, now while Adrian is passing there's only 2 principles there. And while Dr. Egerich was Dr. Egerich was praying to God about this ministry. He was led to one text in the Bible, and that one text will have you remember this. That one text is Ephesians 5:33. That happens to be the last verse of our passage. Okay, Ephesians 5:33. Give me a copy. See, Adrian didn't. Somebody read Ephesians 5:33.
So again, I say each man must love his wife as he loves himself. And the wife must respect her husband.
Okay. Can I erase this now?
Sure.
Not yet, because boy, it's taking the video. Let's use it here. I'll move the crazy cycle here. What's the crazy cycle? Help me out here. What's the crazy cycle? The crazy cycle.
Without love, without respect.
So we got without love up here. What's a crazy cycle? Look at the without respect, he reacts without love. Without love, she reacts without respect. Emerson Eggerichs found this out. And there has been a role reversal in the way a lot of counselors has done this. And sometimes when there's a problem in the home, the wife talks to the husband and tells the husband, "You never respect me. You never respect me. You do all sorts of stuff, but you do not respect me." Then the husband is saying, "Well, I will respect you. You never really love me. You don't show love to me." There's a problem. What's the problem there? You're applying the wrong principle. And he said, and a lot of couples have been very honest in trying to resolve their issues by reversing this, and it will not work because that's not the design of the Bible. What's the design of the Bible? Men requires, what? No. Look, you see? Adrian, you should know this. You're already a married man. Okay.
No, but,
That's without.
man, love, without love reacts.
Without respect. Okay? Let's read Ephesians 5:33 to make it clear. All right? Because it's the reverse. You should go to the other stuff. The energizing cycle is the other stuff. Read that, Cleo, please.
Without respect, he reacts.
Ephesians 5:33.
Nevertheless, let each one of you particularly so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband.
Okay. Very clear, huh?
So I would say to my husband, "I respect you," and he would say to me, "I love you."
Yes, exactly. But you can also tell your husband, "Honey, I really love you," and your husband can tell you, "I respect you." Is there something wrong? Well, I'm not talking about literal words. I'm just talking about attitude and approach. There is something wrong. And like Dr. Egerich was saying, a lot of very sincere Christian couples try to resolve their conflict by trying to reverse this, and it will not work. Because the need of a male is different from the need of a female. Did you happen to notice that? Or you have not?
It works for some people, some marriages.
Oh, it should work for all marriages. See what the Bible is saying, okay? If you meet a group of men and you happen upon them, what do you think will be the topic of conversation? Sports or work, right? Because the man is naturally achievement-oriented. Why is he achievement-oriented? You know why? I'll give you a biblical explanation. Because God said, "By the sweat of your brow, shall you eat." That's part of the curse, of part of the way it is. Therefore, man is challenged by that curse. He tries to resolve that curse by being very, very achieving. Okay? Therefore, they talk about achievement and, ambitions is what men talk about. Now, if you happen up to go against a group of girls in the church, a group of ladies, what do you think will be the topic of conversation? Yeah, something that you feel, right? So, why do you think ladies do not enjoy talking with men? I mean, in their normal conversation. Unless, of course, they start thinking on sports. Okay.
I don't know, because men from Mars and women from Venus.
Well, that's why a lot of people are saying, and I'm gonna go there now. That's why a lot of you look at the seminars of Emerson Eggerichs was basically saying they started learning football. The ladies did. So that they can start talking the language of their husband. That's what you call respect. Instead of saying, all you do is sit there and watch football. That really good, ought to do a lot of good. You know how a man will react? How does Emerson Eggerichs say? A woman has 30,000 words in her vocabulary. Man has 15,000. By the end of the day, he shall have exhausted 14,995. He's got 5 words left. He goes home, he only has 5 words. Meanwhile, the woman has exhausted 15,000. She's got 15,000 words more. And she wants to engage in a 15,000 word conversation when in fact the man is only 5 words. You solve it by, okay? So, then if you reverse that, no, you never respect me, says the woman. And the man says, no, I respect you. That's why I work. I respect you. That's not what she wants. That's not what she needs. And the illustration of Dr. Emerson Eggerichs is, you know what the boot camp is? We call it the pastor's boot camp. Boot camp is where you go to military training. By the way, Benji is not here. Chris is about to be discharged soon, and we're praying that he doesn't get deployed to Afghanistan because we're thinning out our support there. It's very dangerous to be in Afghanistan. So when Chris comes out of the service, he wants to go as an FBI agent. It's cool, huh? Okay. I promise Chris I'll be praying for him every day. And Benji and Vida, every time they see me, they, thanks for your prayer because Chris is really being blessed by God. Okay. Anyways, how do they do training? Example of Emerson Eggerichs is, there's this trainer in the military training, the officer, he looks at the bunch of recruits, he said, you're the lousiest bunch of recruits I've seen in my life. He said, but when I'm done with you, in the next several weeks, you will be the best soldier this country will ever know. So they go to the boot camp. Upon graduation, they'll stand tall with all their uniform. And this. See what I told you, he said? See how good of a soldier you are now. And you know what happens to the soldier with the sad eyes, says Emerson Eggerichs? His head is high. He is so proud to serve his country, and he is willing to die for his country. You follow me carefully. Because the soldier was given respect, he was willing to die. Emerson Eggerichs is saying, you give your husband respect, it's easy for your husband to die for you. That's as simple as that. Right? So there was this one lady who approached Emerson Eggerichs in one of the seminars and said, having a problem with my husband, can you give me a solution to our problems? We're getting divorced in 2 weeks. Irreconcilable differences. And then you know what Emerson Eggerichs said? I'll teach you how to say the language of respect. There's a language that you learn that is respectful. You use words that's respectful. So one day the husband comes home, and then the wife said, oh, honey, how are you doing? How was work today? Husband, where did that come from? He never said that, Oh, you're looking for food. Start that. I know you're doing a ton to help this family, And he started talking. And then, before he knew it, he said, "You know what, Dr. Evergridge?" He started doing dishes. And I kept on that respect language. He was doing laundry. And then, you know what? If I keep on with this, I might just get a cruise. And not anymore because of the problems we have a cruise. What's going on? That divorce never materialized. They got together. Because they learned somehow to remedy the crazy cycle. Unfortunately, it's a very, very simple biblical principle. You bash your head against that cycle, you invite a lot of trouble in your relationships. That's why we go to the other stuff. What is the enabling cycle there? This is the positive as opposed to.
That could be a question.
Yes.
The couples that are saying that, well, how can I respect you when you say I let me respect you?
All right. Okay. I'm gonna thank you for to reminding me of that, Chris. Let me just. This motivates, right? We'll go to Chris's question first. Have you heard of the statement, respect must be earned?
Very often.
How true is that statement? Yes, maybe in the workplace it is. But in the scriptures, do you earn respect in the scriptures? If you read Ephesians 5:22 to 33, does it say that the husband should earn the respect of the wife? What does it say? Because of a particular role, that role actually expects respect from the other person. That's why I always say this. You might not have the best husband and the best father of the world, but he's still a husband and a father, and he's worthy of his respect because of his role. That's very hard for our kids to swallow, especially in this culture where we can badmouth everybody from the president of the Philippines to the pastor of the church and to all the elders. Because I'm right, you did not earn my respect, I will not respect you. That's, how does it say that? There's one pastor, that's baloney, vegetarian baloney. He said, why is it vegetarian baloney? You do not decide who to respect. There are roles in the church that tells you you should respect that particular role, even if you do not agree with that individual. I hope you emphasize that in you. Because we're talking about revelation and worship. People will never learn how to worship if they first don't learn how to respect. You know why we're having problems with our young adults and how secular they are and our young people in the church? The respect that we've learned from the Philippines is not common here. I'll give you an example. I thought I gave this 3 weeks ago. Jess has a niece. Her name is A.B. Castillo. A.B. Castillo is a graduate of UP. How good she is? I thought she perfected one of the exams. She might go to John Hopkins. Anyways, when she became my Facebook friend, I check on her photos. What she posted in Facebook? Presidents in the House. You know their commencement speaker? Who was their commencement speaker? President Aquino. Okay, because this is a UP medical student graduates from PGH. So you can see this very, very intelligent lady, in a very, very prominent family in the Philippines. Rafi owns 5 publications, the most popular publications, health publications in the country. It's a very low-key family. I always admire this family. You don't see them flaunt whatever they have. You will not know that they're that notorious and popular in the Philippines, but they are. So when AB came here to interview into some hospitals here, we said, Jess, can we take AB and Glenn out for dinner one night? So we took them out. We went to Burrage in one of the restaurants there. You know the first thing that AB did when she saw me? Hi, Uncle Bing, kumusta na po kayo? Hindi po. That's why it's easy to talk about worship in the Philippines. In English, Adrian, that means, hi, Uncle Bing, how are you doing, sir? Not a single sentence without a sir or a ma'am. You expect that here? And we're wondering why we're having problems with our kids. We talk to them about worship and appreciating what it means to go to church and to worship God, when in fact they think they're so entitled, they don't have this respect that we learned when we were growing up. No wonder when they get married, they have problems with respect too. And then they have problems with their families. How do they say it in the language of our young people? Duh. What do you expect? So, you don't. I'll say this during my next Revelation sermon, which will be on the 16th. And I gotta share this with you too. Maybe we can just end with this. I said this before, I just repeat this. John Lennox was debating Richard Dawkins, both Oxford professors. They were talking about problem of evil and suffering, and Richard Dawkins was bad-mouthing God. If God is really all-powerful, does he allow evil and suffering? Okay, there's really no God. Okay, and if he's really all-powerful, why in the world does he allow evil? You can go to the circles, and then John Lennox said, well, because he's given man free choice. He's a free moral agent, because without free choice, love is not possible. And then, of course, Richard Dawkins badmouthed me. And finally, he went into this analogy. John Lennox, this is one of the most pointed part of the debate. John Lennox looked Richard Dawkins in the eye and said, Richard, do you have kids? Yes, you have a wife and you have kids. When your kids were being conceived by your wife, did it ever occur to you that it is possible for that kid to be born and break your heart when they go into their teenage years? He said that, I tell you how poignant that is. You know it is possible for them to break your heart the moment they turn teens. After you spend so much for them, you even be willing to give all your life for them, they won't care by the time they get to this particular age. And then John Lennox turned around and looked at Richard and asked, why in the world did you decide to still have kids if there was a risk? Very nice answer, because if I don't risk it, there will be no possibility for them to love me back too. That's amazing. That's the story of the story of the gospel says God risked everything in Jesus Christ, because he knows that it's a very good risk. Because they say, if you see my son, you cannot help but fall in love with me. That's what he's trying to say. That's what he offered. The same also with the model that we've studied. There will be a lot of risks. Most important thing is to take that risk not for your own sake, but take the risk for the sake of the guy, of that God who designed marriage in the first place. And you follow that model. The closer you are to the model, the happier your home would be. The farther away you are from the model, the more problems you will have in the family. I'm telling you, it will be I know by the time you get to your classes, there will be a lot of discussions. I mean, I'm telling you, probably won't go past the third point here. The first 2 points alone, there's going to be a lot of questions, particularly for equality and all this sort of stuff. But hey, I'm just a messenger, okay? I'm not supposed to tell you what to do. I'm just supposed to tell you what God says is the model for us to follow. And I guarantee that you follow God's model, you'll never go wrong. Yes,
You're supposed to respect the position that they serve.
oh yes, that's a very important point. That's a very important point. It is possible to disagree and still be disrespectful, right? Right? How do you do that? You can tell, Mom, Dad, I still respect you, but I just cannot agree with what you say. You just don't turn around and slam the door in the face of your dad or your mom because you disagreed. You have no right to do that. That's what the Bible says. I don't care how you justify it in psychology. You have no right. You have no right to tell your dad and your mom, you should earn my respect. Baloney, vegetarian baloney. That's it. The Bible says, because it's a mom and your dad, they're worthy of your respect as kids. And may I extend this with our study right now. Don't tell me, what kind of husband are you? Sorry. There's a guideline right there. You're not comfortable, you don't say it that way. It will cut to the core. I'm telling you, you study this lesson next week. And I always say, I don't care what the problems in our families are in this church. The only reason why we had problems was we strayed away from this model. And like Bonnie is suggesting, if we only pray that we go back closer to this model, the more powerful families we have, and we will have discipleship in the church. Yes.
Why is it that our church is not conducting regular marriage seminar?
It's a good question to ask.
It's like
Sir.
a Moody. I listen
Sure.
to the Moody every day, and
Sure.
you know what? I'm so amazed how they have this,
Sure.
like every year or twice a year?
Sure.
That they have a seminar for couples.
You know,
I thought we should do
that's a
that.
very valid point, and maybe we should raise that next time we meet as an elders, because I remember several years ago we were about to have our church anniversary. We had problems with our kids. What with Bonnie and I, our group, our generation, we didn't have a whole lot of problems with our kids because the culture wasn't as permissive then. It was easier to show them the chinelas and they behave. They just don't run around and as liberated as they are. So we had problems with decorum in the church. The church was in disarray every Sabbath, and we were scratching our heads for several board meetings. What will we do with the decorum in the church every Sabbath? You know what we decided to do? After potluck, we decided to have a parenting seminar among the young parents. It was a simple video from James Dobson, and then we processed the thing, and we had a group discussion. You know how much help that gave to a lot of the families? You will find out that when you conduct seminars like those, a lot of families in the church are clueless as to what they need to do. They want to fellowship and have a very effective membership in the church, but they don't know what to do. But that's a very good point. Maybe we should raise that, especially this coming Sabbath.
Like we have some divorce problem going on, and I think it's because some of the couples are young, and it's a different you don't have.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I know what you're trying to say. I know what you're trying to say, Susan. And you know how silly sometimes the reasons for divorce are. You don't buy me things.
Yeah, but if you have the same
Yeah. But that's my point. But
Yeah.
the reason why that is, you're right, Susan. The fact is, we did not equip them to understand this. But why do we have this simple? Oh, he doesn't buy me any. Look at that other family. Look at that husband. He buys this and this. You know how shallow those things are. And because and then we wonder why we mess ourselves up. Because we always think, Lord, I'm smarter than you. I can do this. That's yours. I have a better idea. It turns out your better idea is not really that good. You're not teaching this coming Sabbath because you're late. Okay, you'll have a problem. Okay, all right. It's one thing I like with Noel. He shows up whenever he teaches. So he doesn't. He needs more than 30 minutes. He needs an hour to teach.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm curious about that thing. I've been.
Yeah.
I think I asked the pastor about that. It's like one point. This happened last year. He texted me that to pray for someone, who have this problem. And I said, I text back and I said, how come we don't have.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe I'll make sure. Remind me. What's next month? That will be March 1 this coming year. Yeah, remind me because we'll have an elders meeting this coming Sabbath. Remind me when we do the preview. So I'll bring that up because that's important. But you gotta understand. This lesson, this coming Sabbath, is more practical than doctrinal. Obviously, this is doctrinal, but this deals with a lot of practice. That's why it will touch on a very tender chord among the members of your class, which is good. Like Bonnie is saying, maybe we end there. We need to pray more for each other to get that going because we just can't approximate the model. It's only God can enable us to do that. All right?
And they're using the legal term irreconcilable difference now on all divorce.
Oh, by the way, that's a good question. On the grounds of the scriptures, Jesus said there's only one ground for divorce. What's the ground for divorce, said Jesus Christ? Immorality. Only immorality is a ground for divorce. Any other ground for divorce is not biblical. What is the ground for divorce in the United States? The irreconcilable differences. You know how you define that irreconcilable difference? If the egg is cooked too well, it's so open-ended. Why? Because you think, men, I think they're smarter than this model. God is just saying, no, you cannot better this model. This model I give to you, the closer you are, the better you will be. Like the tithe, brother. You follow him, take God at his word. You will make a difference in your relationships. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, thank thee for this very practical lesson that we just studied. Oh Lord, may the Spirit enable and empower us to follow your model and teach us to trust you so that by following exactly the principles you've laid out for us this afternoon, we will find more fulfillment and happiness in the church and in our families. Be with us as teachers and participants in our Sabbath school classes this coming Sabbath. May we be used as an instrument to somehow propagate these very important life-changing principles among our members so that we can have a stronger body who will serve you here in Hinsdale. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.